All right. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm going to make a couple of quick announcements and then I'll get into the agenda. One, I want to point out that we do have CART or live captioning available. So if you go to the bottom of your screen, you should see 3 dots that say more, and you should be able to enable closed captioning to view the captions for today. We also do have ASL available. If you go through the list of folks on the screen today, you should be able to see our 2 interpreters. The first word that you will see in their names is interpreter, so you'll be able to identify them. I would say our best recommendation is that you're able to spotlight people so that they always remain at the front of your screen. So if you go to the interpreter's picture on the screen, and you should see 3 dots on the top right. And when you click on those 3 dots, you should have an option that says to spotlight, and that will allow you to keep the interpreters towards the top of your screen. If you don't see spotlight, it may give you an option that says pin person. So pin or spotlight should help you be able to do that. And when I say interpreter, I mean sign language interpreter for folks that can use those. All right, so welcome. Welcome to a space that is full of Black magic and crypt power. For far too long, we have seen discussions and images that place false expectations across Black communities, and we have heard detrimental messages that our voices, our bodies, and our votes do not matter. But they must not have known that our country was built on the backs of folks like Harriet Tubman, a Black disabled woman, like Brad Lomax, a Black disabled man, like Marsha P. Johnson, a Black disabled trans woman, and like Fannie Lou Hamer, a Black disabled woman. It has been the utmost honor and privilege to work alongside 5 incredible organizers and the American Association of People with Disabilities Fannie Lou Hamer program. We stand in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement, and we are committed to reimagining our systems and communities in a way that recognizes Black Lives Matter, including our Black disabled lives. And our commitment expands even beyond the United States. We also stand in solidarity with our family and comrades in Nigeria who are also combating police brutality and systems that do not uplift the meaning of freedom and justice. So right now we have an opportunity. Contrary to some belief, there is power in the disability vote. There is power in the Black vote. So there is definitely power in our intersections. We must vote in this year's election. We must vote to protect the legislation and the people who genuinely reflect our interests, and we must vote out those issues and people who don't. Now, I can't tell you who or what to vote for, but I am saying that you have the power to create change and hold our elected officials accountable. But for those of you new to AAPD, the American Association of People with Disabilities is a national civil rights organization that works to uplift the political and economic empowerment of people with disabilities. The Fannie Lou Hamer program is a subset of our Rev Up network, and the Fannie Lou Hamer program is committed to civic engagement and voting across the intersections of the Black and disabled communities. We cannot thank you enough for your participation in today's discussion. We want to give a special shout out to our partner organizations and those who have been with us along this journey as we've been figuring out civic engagement and voting. We want to give a special shout out to Alliance for Justice, the Center for American Progress, Color of Change, DC Board of Elections, Fair Fight, the Leadership Conference, Disability Rights of Pennsylvania, State Voices, the National Urban League, When We All Vote, and New View Consulting. And finally, we want to give a big shout out to our President and CEO, Maria Town, for holding us down throughout this entire program. Again, we want to say thank you so much for your participation. As we get prepared for the conversation that we're having today, I want to go over a couple of ground rules and accessibility points. So one, as we have this conversation today, we want to emphasize that we are attempting to build a safe space for everyone to give their input and their opinion. We may not always agree, but we want to make sure we're creating a space where we can be respectful in our responses. Secondly, we want to emphasize that we have tried to create a space that centers the experiences of Black people with disabilities. And so we welcome everyone to be a part of this conversation, all folks to participate, engage in the chat box, ask questions, all of those different types of things, but be mindful that we want to center first the voices and the thoughts of Black people with disabilities. Thirdly, we want to ask that this be a community conversation. So we will have some intentional time for question and answer towards the end of the discussion today. We also encourage conversation throughout the entire evening in the chat box. We ask that when you introduce yourself, if you can please include your pronouns, that would be very helpful so that we do not misgender anyone. Next, we want to say pause and silence is okay, right? We encourage for folks to think, to listen, to give time for translation. Don't feel you have to rush your thoughts, your feedback, any questions you may have. Next, we want to say, be mindful of how much space you take up and allowing other folks to also share their perspective and opinions in today's discussion. I'm one of those folks who feels very comfortable with voicing my thoughts and opinions. And there's a difference between that and kind of overtaking the space. So just being mindful of that. And then in terms of accessibility, I want to do another reminder that we do have American Sign Language available. So again, if you look at the folks that are displayed at the top of the screen, our interpreters, the first word that you'll see is interpreter. So you can spotlight or pin their kind of images at the top of the screen so you can see them signing in today's event. We also, again, have CART available, or live captioning. So if you go to the bottom right of your screen, click the More button, you will be able to enable closed captions to read along with the discussion today. And then also, we're very excited to have so many people joining us in today's call. We'd love to see your faces. We love to see your reactions. We love for everyone to kind of meet and interact with each other. But the only side about that is that there can be background noise. So we definitely ask that you keep yourself muted unless you are speaking throughout the presentation today, just to help us minimize with any of the background noise. And then finally, if you find yourself having a question throughout the presentation, we will, as I mentioned, have some intentional time for question and answer. But if you find yourself that you have a question throughout the midst of the program, if you can type a star in the chat box before you enter your question, and that will allow us to make sure that we capture it so we can come back to it towards the end of the program. So again, if you could enter a star and then your question, we will make sure to capture all of that. All right. So again, today, we are going to have an incredible conversation that reimagines our systems and communities in a way that recognizes Black disability freedom. This discussion will take place with 5 organizers from the Fannie Lou Hamer program. So to start off, I'm your moderator. My name is Carrie Gray. I work as the Senior Director at the American Association of People with Disabilities. I have the utmost honor of working with an incredible team to help lead our voting efforts at AAPD. As a visual description, I'm a Black woman. I wear glasses. I currently have on a mustard head wrap, a mustard shirt that says Black Disabled Lives Matter. I don't think you can see the whole thing. Shout out to Jen White Johnson. And my pronouns are she, her. And with that, I am going to start it off with the introductions of our 5 organizers. I'm going to first pass it to Drizzy to introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Adrena Nguyen, and I go by Dreezy. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I am located in Tallahassee, Florida. And I graduated from the University of Florida in 2017, and I have a degree in graphic design and art and technology, as well as an arts and medicine certificate. And I am super excited to be in this space with you all. I'm super excited for this event, and I'm gonna pass it over to Ra.
Greetings, y'all. My name is Ra Malika Imhotep. I am a Black feminist writer and performance artist and cultural worker from Atlanta, Georgia originally, but currently based in New Orleans, Louisiana. I'm also a doctoral student at UC Berkeley in the Department of African and African American Studies and Afro-Diaspora Studies. And I forgot something that I was about to say. Oh, I'm the co-convener of a spiritual political education project called the Church of Black Feminist Thought. And I am before you today, a dark-skinned Black femme wearing mustard-colored glasses and a mustard-colored t-shirt and a head wrap with yellow, orange, and brown in it. And I'm gonna pass it to Tolu.
Hi everyone, my name is Tolu Adedoja. I am a Nigerian citizen. I moved to the United States 3 years ago, and I've been going to college since then. I currently go to the University of Arizona, and I live in Los Angeles, California right now due to COVID. So I am wearing the light blue collar t-shirt, and I have very tiny mustache and beard. And my pronouns are he, him, his. Thank you. And I'm going to hand it over to Jalen.
Thank you, Tulu. Hi, everyone. My name is Jalen Radzaminski, and I go by she, they pronouns. Just to describe a little bit of what I'm wearing and looking like, I'm wearing some space buns for fun today. I'm also wearing a tan jacket over a mustard-colored shirt that also says Black Disabled Lives Matter. You probably can't see, but shout out to that movement. It's important. And I was born and raised in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I'm really passionate about human and civil rights as well as disability and voter equity. I am also passionate about prison abolition work, and besides this program, I also do a nonprofit in Indiana called Count Us In, and I graduated from Emory in 2018. So I'm working professional, but here I am. And last but not least, I'd like to pass it to Shayla.
Thanks, Jalen. Hi, everyone. I'm Shayla Gaither. Actually, my background is a graphic of Fannie Lou Hamer, but I look like a African-American female with a rust-colored dress and some flashy jewelry, I would say. My hair is in twists, and they're in a ponytail and with two kind of mirroring my face. A little bit about me. I am currently in college. I am a senior, and I'm going to be graduating in May 2021. My degree will be in business administration and communications with a track in PR and advertising. But besides advertising, I'm also really passionate about advocacy and just awareness. I grew up in Cheltenham, PA, outside of Philadelphia, and there I really just found a voice to help advocate for persons with disability and the Black community as well. Thank you.
Great. All right. So now we're going to go ahead and kick off our discussion. As one final reminder, we encourage you and invite you to join in this discussion with us in the chat box. If you have thoughts, if you have reactions, put that in there. A lot of folks are introducing themselves. We encourage that also. Drop your name and any information and affiliation about yourself. And we would love to have you join us in this conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and kick off the first question to our panelists, and that is, why is voting and integrated civic engagement important to Black people with disabilities?
I can chime in. I think it's important for us to have a voice and to make sure our voices are heard, and not only to do that, but to also put some action behind our voice. So it's important to vote. I'm here for voting, but it's also like we have to make sure we get ourselves on the ballot too. Making sure that if we don't know how to run for a position, making sure we're educating ourselves and educating our community on how to get on the ballot. And also making sure that folks understand that you're gonna vote, but then in between the time from the next election, we have to still continue to fight this fight. So that's where a lot of the civic engagement comes in, where we continue and we don't just put our ballot in and then, you know, wake up and hope that, you know, the world's changed. That's not realistic, but actually being able to continue to engage with our community.
Oh, hey, y'all, I was on mute. But thank you so much, Jeezy. I wanted to take a moment to just lift up the folks. Well, one, to lift up the really wonderful political education curriculum that Carrie and I think Carrie put together for us with the collaboration of all our partner organizations. In particular, Jordan Deloach of State Voices, who, when we were having our political education session, named or offered up the term of integrated civic engagement, that kind of put the finger on all that we have been thinking and feeling about, like how hard and complicated it was to try to get people to, or to try to get people to register to vote, to pump the election, to pump voting at a time where like so much was happening. We were in so much crisis with the pandemic, with kind of like, you know, the resurgence of like state sanctioned violence and terror in our communities. And so I think, and then one of our speakers, Imani Barbarin, actually like said the thing that really woke me up, was that for like folks with disabilities, like so much of our lives are legislated. And I think there's a way that like coming from a more like leftist and radical kind of academic tradition, it's easy to have like an ideology of like why certain types of civic participation don't mean what they think they mean. And then I think for me, this work that I've done, specifically focusing on Black folks with disabilities, has just opened my eyes to how like sometimes ableist those ideologies can be, in overlooking the fact that there are so many of our folks who are at the mercy of these ballot measures and amendments and politicians. So we can't just ignore it. And I think the framing of integrated civic engagement, thinking about like comprehensive and holistic approaches to getting folks engaged, not just on the one moment of election day, but beyond that and before that. How do you meet people's basic needs in addition to encouraging them to participate in democracy? And that's been something like one of my biggest takeaways from this program.
Absolutely. So to give a visual description of what's on the screen right now, there is a purple and blue flyer that asks the question, why is voting and integrated civic engagement important to Black people with disabilities? There is a quote by Alexis Anderson Reed from State Voices that says, integrated civic engagement takes into account myriad issues on our community space and the activities required to fight for political power. It's hard to participate in elections when you're worried about everyday survival, like having a roof over your head or being able to afford dinner. It's hard to participate in elections when the process has been set up to marginalize you. And it's hard to participate in elections when you're rightfully disillusioned with the system. We can't blame someone for not wanting to engage in a system that has harmed them. We need to listen to their needs and make sure we address them in order to construct a new, healthier democracy. Real. Thank y'all for your responses. I'm gonna move to the second question for today. So the second question is, ableism is a big menace in our workplaces, campuses, and communities. And this is especially common for Black people with disabilities. How can people with disabilities tackle and change ableism in our communities? How can people with disabilities inform the greater population of ableism and how it exists to be more inclusive?
And I can give a response. This is Jalen. And honestly, this question ties into the reason why I was passionate about trying to join this fellowship. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm a young professional. I've only been out of school for a few years, and I experienced a lot of ableism in the university setting, but also as a young professional, I'm really interested in political work. However, I started to become really scared. You know, I've worked in nonprofit organizations that have prided themselves in being about diversity when essentially when it came time to ask for accommodations, I was systematically bullied out. And it's systematically difficult for us to even take our cases to court. It's difficult for us to prove not only that we have a disability, especially if you live with an invisible disability, but also just, you know, show that we deserve, you know, accommodation. So that was experiences I had. And even when I had kind supervisors, no fault of their own, the way political participation is set up in different like political internships type of spaces, it wasn't designed for me. So even though I was doing work, it was at the expense of my health. And I was at the point in my life where I'm like, well, I want to do this so bad. I want to make change so bad. And I wanted to make change so bad. And it's like, but can I survive here? You know, can I really survive here? Can I really do this? And this is why I think these spaces are incredibly important. This is why I think this question is important because, you know, if we ourselves, you know, aren't able to fight for this space, I think allyship is also important. And when we're constructing these spaces, it's important for us to be at the table. So I guess when I think of this question in the workplace, campus, and community, I say, like, for me personally, I have to overcome internalized capitalism that my output equals my worth. But then it's not just me, it's also on the other end. What are you doing to make your workplace inclusive? How are you bringing us to the table? How are you literally integrating us to be able to participate? So that's how I would respond.
Absolutely. Anyone else on the panel want to take a crack at this? So again, just to give a visual description of what's on the screen, again, the purple and blue slide, and there's a definition of ableism by T.L. Lewis. If you're not following T.L.'s work, we highly recommend that you do so. So the definition says a system that places value on people's bodies and minds based on societal, socially constructed ideas of normalcy, intelligence, and excellence. These constructed ideas of normalcy, intelligence, and excellence are deeply rooted in anti-Blackness, eugenics, and capitalism. This form of systemic oppression leads to people and society determining who is valuable or worthy based on people's appearance and or their ability to satisfactorily produce, excel, and behave. Importantly, you do not have to be disabled to experience ableism. So again, as we have this discussion, we encourage you to chat along with us. If you have thoughts, if you have reactions, feel free to put that in the chat box and join it in us in discussion today. Shayla, did you have your hand raised?
Yes, I do want to add on before we go to the next question. I do want to add on that ableism can have many forms. And from my personal experience, I think it just comes also from a lack of understanding and knowledge sometimes. And like I said, it comes in many forms, but if you go through a life being able to do something, you might not realize that, hey, someone can't do what you can do, right? And I think to answer the later part of that question on how can people with disabilities inform the greater population of ableism and how it exists to be more inclusive is just doing one of those things where it's, hey, live a day in my shoes. If you can live a day in my shoes, then it really wakes other groups of people to your struggles and just another perspective. And I know personally, at school, my school is not the most accessible. I have a physical disability, and everyone's just like, you know, it's school, you know, take it with the punches, everything's fine, right? And so last year I was like, okay, we need to do an accessibility tour. I'm going to take the Board of Trustees in wheelchairs, crutches, other apparatuses around this campus. Just see how you do, highlighting the parts that are the most inaccessible. By the end of the day, they're like, wow, I didn't realize how hard one curb cut could be, one uneven sidewalk, how many stairs, or how long it might take to get to class. And that's just an example of a way where you can inform the greater population of their ableism. Live a day in my shoes, just to see how it is. And then we can work together to make the environment more inclusive.
Absolutely. Some gems to point out here. Great stuff. Okay, so I'm going to move us to the third question for today's panel, and that is around imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome and stereotype threat are commonly associated terms. And although a large percentage of people experience them in their daily life, in the disability community, they are especially more common. How can people with disabilities overcome imposter syndrome and stereotypes that threaten their day-to-day lives? How can we inform others of disability stereotypes and how to be more inclusive and more professional and academic environments?
Yes, so I can answer that a little bit. So when we look at imposter syndrome, a lot of people experience it, like just like Carol said, with or without disabilities. A lot of us will go through that at one point or the other in our lifetime. But the difference with people with disabilities is that a lot of times I think people with disabilities are made to feel that way. Like people around them, those who see them, just they put this sort of burden on you that makes you feel like that makes you doubt your abilities. When we look at the aspect of maybe applying for jobs, a lot of people with disabilities are made to feel like a burden. They are made to feel like what some people call insurance burden, because, oh, if we give him this job or if we give her this job, she's not going to be able to show up to work every day. She's going to be taking sick days off and all of that. So a lot of times people with disabilities, when they apply for jobs, a lot of experiments have been carried out, and we've seen that it's very difficult for people with disabilities. So at least it's way more difficult for people with disabilities to get jobs compared with people without disabilities. And these are the frustrations that people get. A lot of people with disabilities don't even bother applying for jobs at all. They just feel like, well, maybe let me just live on Social Security, because when I've applied for a lot of jobs, you know, they're not calling me back, or when they call me back and they see that I'm disabled, you know, they don't give me the job. So a lot of them are discouraged from applying for jobs. And even the ones that do apply for jobs, when they get these jobs, they are scared to ask for accommodation. So they don't want to say, oh, I need this, I need that, because, well, they already know that people see them as though they are a burden. So they want to prove that they are not a burden. So they're like, oh, let me not ask for this. They don't want to be too much. They don't want to ask for too much. And these people, tying back to ableism, which we just talked about. So these people, when they experience ableism in the workplace, a lot of them don't talk. A lot of them don't say anything. I think in overcoming this, the first thing to think about is that it's completely fine to speak up and ask for accommodation. Accommodations, they shouldn't be seen as a privilege. It's something we deserve. It's our right. If you have a disability, you should have accommodation. So people with disabilities should not be scared, whether in school or in workplaces, whatever you need to enable you do your job effectively. It's something you should be free to communicate with your employer, with your educators. And I think the way people with disabilities are treated is commonly due to ignorance. If you have never experienced physical or invisible disability, or you've never had a friend or a family member with a disability, it's difficult for you to put yourself in the shoes of people who have gone through these things. So it's almost normal that you will have some sort of ignorance, unless you're someone who is very curious to educate yourself about disability issues and you tend to study about it or you talk to people about it. If you just live your life every day and you've never encountered something like that, you probably wouldn't know what it's like. So I think it's important to educate people about the impacts, the qualities of people with disabilities. Just being a person with a disability, you tend to increase the diversity of anywhere that you're in. Your workplace, your school. Disability kind of brings this sort of difference that makes the place even a lot more the variety increases the spice in the place. And we talk about people with disabilities having a lot of potentials. We can do this, we can do that. You can only know these things when you give people the chance to do something. Give people with disabilities the opportunity to get jobs and do a lot of stuff. Then that is when you will begin to see that people with disabilities have a lot of potentials. And I think just as this program is for, it's very important for people with disabilities to be civically engaged. In the workplaces, when we experience a lot of ableism, a lot of people with disabilities don't have the money to sue. I mean, America is all about, court cases here and there, but a lot of people don't even have the money to do that. And a lot of people don't have someone to talk to. They just experience it and they internalize it and they just, just let it go. I think getting engaged with civic engagement would help. A lot of social advocacy groups should be a very safe space for people with disabilities to just come in and just vent, just, talk about their experiences. Within a school, within a workplace, we can have social groups for people with disabilities, no matter how small the school is or how small the workplace is. Starting from 2 people, 3 people, we can come together and maybe informally just create a kind of organization within us where someone with a disability can go in and have a lot of, joy to talk about how they feel. When you have people with disabilities coming together, others can talk, they can get advice, and they can support and help one another. Oh, I'm experiencing this at my workplace. They can advise you, this is how to go about it. This is who should talk to, or this shouldn't be happening. This is the next step. It could be on social media. It could be through events like this, the Fannie program that we're doing, which is geared towards people of color with disabilities. So I think getting people with disabilities more civically engaged will help combat the issue of ableism. And the idea of looking at people with disabilities and saying, oh, there would be a burden, there would be an insurance burden, it's just stereotype phrase. A lot of people have always thought this was the case, but we can change this. It is okay to take a sick day off. If you cannot work, you cannot work. If you have this disability, you should be able to say, oh, I have this, I'm sick today, I can't do this. And your employer shouldn't be thinking about replacing you because you have this health issue. So there should be, that awareness should be there. I think employers with or without disabilities should go through some form of training or some kind of workshop before they actually take some leadership positions in organizations. Or when you get in promotion in an organization, you should undergo some kind of training where there would be a lot of time devoted to talking about the issue of disability, workplace disability, school disability, so you can understand that employing someone with a disability, having them taking a day off or something, is totally fine. Asking for accommodation is totally fine. It's something you should do. It's something you should not even be reminded. If you're reminded, you should even be thanking them for reminding you. You shouldn't be feeling mad about it. So I think that's one way to move forward. Thank you.
That was like, that just gave me life. I want to chime in here. And I also want to apologize for not giving my description. I have rainbow braids, a black headband, and a black and white dress with crazy patterns. Yeah, so there's a lot of elements going on here with this question, but I want to talk a little bit about this question and the last one. I am Black, I'm disabled, I'm queer, I'm an artist, and a lot of times I never feel like I fit or belong in a space because the space may not feel safe for me. And there are many things that could help me feel safe. And one of those examples I want to give is in college, most syllabus have a section that talk about how you can get accommodations, talk about the Disability Resource Center, or mental health center at the school. And probably 60% of the time while I was in college, there were professors who would just get to that portion of the syllabus and just say, oh, y'all don't have to worry about this, or we can skip over this part. And I struggled for my first 2 years of college because I didn't even know that I could get accommodations. So making sure that we give people the resources that they need to thrive. And it's not like, oh, I'm trying to get accommodations to have more than the next person. I'm just trying to get on like the basic level of that same person. And I also wanted to chime in a little bit that there are systems and structures that have been set up to hold us back. And some of those are on purpose, and some of them, like my professors, some of them really didn't mean any harm, but they're a part of that as well when they're continuing to hold us back from resources and knowledge that we need to thrive. And I just feel like many times, I think Jalen had mentioned this, being in a space and people wanting to overwork, or people wanting to have a working lunch, or working till 1 or 2 in the morning. And for me, I just physically can't do that. So for me, I feel like the imposter syndrome comes in from these outside elements. And then you also have that element of ableism as well. And with those things, it may just be speaking up and saying, hey, actually, I can't have a working lunch today. I need time to ground myself. Or it may be saying like, hey, can I have a day for my mental health? And being able to speak up and advocate for ourselves is hard. It's hard because, number one, you can advocate for yourself and you may need to prove that you have a disability. And that has happened to me before. I have sickle cell disease, and I've been asked before during a sickle cell crisis, hey, can you come into the office so I can see what's going on? And I'm thinking to myself, the professor is not gonna see anything. They're just gonna, like, they just physically can't see it. It's a blood disorder. So having these different things set up, and the teacher, again, didn't mean any harm, but it's just another element of me having to fight to get basic accommodations just to be on the same exact level as the next person. And it's hard to fit in a space when I go over in a room full of scientists and I'm the artist. I feel like the oddball out. And then I go over to the space with the artist, and I'm from a rural area. My parents aren't artists. I just was self-taught until I went to college and learned about all the things of the world's galleries and these other things that I had no idea about. And people were talking about, I went to art school and high school, and I'm just like, what? And then going into that space and feeling like I'm not good enough. And each space I'm going into feeling like I'm not good enough. So there's these outside things, but then internally, there is me telling myself I'm not good enough because that's just what society has put on me. So having to undo that, it takes a lot. It takes some time in counseling. It takes some time healing. And again, these things, not everyone has access to it. Not everyone understands the importance of it. So it's more than just overcoming imposter syndrome and stereotypes. It's a lot of structures set up that are holding us back.
That was so well said. I admire everyone who talked like before, because everything was so profound and great. And what Jeezy and Tula said about the system being in place that is just not helpful is definitely detrimental, and definitely makes you kind of question yourself in society. And if I may talk candidly about my experiences in a way that also talks about their internalization of imposter syndrome and of stereotypes and such things. Growing up with a disability, you can internalize these stereotypes, right? Stereotypes are things that society says you are, and what happens is you think that you are this. And I think both the intersection between being Black and disabled makes it so difficult. Because in school, right, you not only have to feel like you have to work harder because your professor, teacher looks at you differently because maybe the color of your skin, okay, you know, maybe they don't know. But then also because of your disability, whether it's physical or not, then you also feel like, oh, I need to prove myself. I need to do better than everybody here because I need to show that my color and my disability are not going to hold me down. In high school, I'll never forget the day when or at least high school and middle school, where I felt so, I would say alone, because people would say, oh, that girl is about to run me over. It would be like, oh, partying the whole hallway because I'm different or what have you. And so that's a stereotype, you know, oh, that I'm going to run them over, or that somehow I'm going to have malice onto the people at school. The kid came up to me, told me he had a dream that I ran him over. I did not do anything to that kid. I don't know why you believe that. But a way to cope with that stereotype, I thought at the time, oh, if I dress nice, then maybe I will get respect. If I dress nice at work, if I dress nice at school, maybe, you know, I can overcome those stereotypes. I can make myself feel like I belong. And like Dreezy said, it takes counseling and time to realize, like, that's not what the world should be like. You shouldn't have to change yourself to accommodate for society. And you should feel okay being comfortable in your skin in the professional and the academic environments. And it's now becoming an adult where it's like, okay, how do I do that? How do we do that? And honestly, it's partially living your best life. It's being empowered by the things that you can do, and also strengthening the things that you can't. And all of that, it makes you in other environments realize that I'm okay who I am. You know, there's nothing wrong with it. I am not an imposter. I earned my seat at the table. I was either born or given these circumstances, and that's okay. And when you live your best life, a lot of people are usually inspired by you. And so I think also to break down these stereotypes and inform in professional and academic environments, including trainings, including the system, I think we internally have to make ourselves strong as well. And I think that is by realizing that whatever you have done in your life, you deserve something great. You deserve a seat at the table. You deserve to have whatever accommodations you need. You deserve to feel like you belong. And so internally, I do think that it's really important for the disability and the Black community, especially if you fit somewhere in between, because two things that you're constantly are aware about is the color of your skin and the accommodations that you need. So I think that internalization is also really important as well.
Wow. There has been so much to unpack and just this bit of conversation that we've had today. I'm going to read the definition that's on the screen for accessibility. So it's a definition of imposter syndrome by Steele and Aronson. The definition says, imposter syndrome is a persistent internalized fear of inadequacy or incompetency. When individuals have self-doubt, their accomplishments, skills, or talents, and can often feel like a fraud. Stereotype threat is socially premised psychological threat that arises when one is in the situation or doing something for which a negative stereotype about one group applies. I actually want to as I mentioned earlier, we have some intentional time for Q&A. We have a little bit more discussion with the panel before we get that, but I actually want to take a couple of responses from the audience, just based on what we've discussed so far. There's been a lot of great discussion in the chat box. Right before I do that, I think, Jalen, did you have a comment to this question?
Yeah, I can keep it really brief. This is Jalen. And when I was just listening to my colleagues talk, I feel like they took a lot of the words right out my mouth. And I guess an example I could also offer, just from what I've seen in some professional and academic spaces, is some people call them ERGs, or employee resource groups, in the workplace, when there's different resource groups that support, you know, Black people, women, people with disabilities, and even LGBTQIA plus people. I found that that's a nice space where you can find other, if your org has it, it's a nice space where we can come together and talk about how to better integrate the workplace, but also have a safe space to talk, you know, before going out and having that burden of, you know, educating your workplace on how to do better. And another interesting example I saw was, I've been, you know, going to different law school info sessions, and a school that really actually helped me feel welcome to even want to go to that school is because I met someone from their Disability Law School Alliance, and they were saying even though their school isn't perfectly accessible, they actually come when someone needs accommodations, instead of the burden falling on one of us, because I could tell y'all that's exhausting. They actually work together to fight for accommodations or address the core issue that's impacting multiple students. So I guess for the question, I just thought those were really powerful examples to just share. And then I guess I also want to throw out there for the academic space, that was actually a lot of people's birth of activism. And for me, I felt imposter syndrome as a Black person at a PWI because I deal with severe anxiety and depression, so I can't go out and march in the streets every time like I would like to. Crowds freak me out, it's a lot. So I felt imposter syndrome about that, but I did a lot of self-care and, you know, thinking, and I was like, well, how can I create a space that will include us? And it actually pushed me to create a space that was safer, where it was more creating art and actually bringing like different counselors also to the event, so that we could actually facilitate Black Lives Matter protest in a more calming way. And that was during the 2016 Black Lives Matter movement I did that, but I'm grateful that that happened and that I actually embraced myself, because now here we are in 2020 having to create space for Black people with disabilities to be able to protest. And I don't know, I just wanted to throw those examples out there to spark ideas.
Absolutely. So much stuff. So again, I'm going to take 2 comments, and then we're going to come back to the panel before we open it up to broader Q&A. Julia put a star in. Julia, do you still have a comment or question from anything on the panel thus far?
Yes. My comment is, I'm thinking of hearing about Black Lives Matter. Well, specifically, does it? And my question is, does it know about the testing accommodation?
So just to make sure I caught that, I think the question was, are there accommodations around testing? Are you talking about like when you're in school?
Yes.
Right. So
All
anyone
right, Carrie.
on the panel?
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I can talk on testing accommodations. That actually got me through undergrad, and it actually got me through what the LSAT is called, the law school entrance exam. A lot of, you know, in-school tests aren't really typically built for considering people with different disabilities, but also grad school entry exams. And it can be really hard if you don't have accommodations. And I'll tell you, I'm sorry I missed what university you're at, Julia, but sometimes they're called slightly different things. But if
Jalen, I'm from Gutman.
Gutman, okay.
My major
Nice
is
to meet you.
information technology. Yeah, you too. Jalen.
Nice to meet you. I would say.
Hi, Jalen. My name is Charmaine. I'm so sorry. Right. Hey, Carrie. It's good to see you again. All right. Julia is a student at one of our community colleges at the City University of New York.
Thank you. That should
My
mean
pleasure.
he's part of our Rev Up network. Thank you.
Yeah, so good to see you.
Appreciate it. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jalen.
Oh, no problem. Welcome, y'all. This is great. I was just going to say, it might be called something different, but see if your campus has an accessibility office. I regret not knowing that accessibility offices existed on my campus sooner, but usually if you apply for accommodations through that, it'll help advocate for you so you can get testing accommodations for all your classes, for all your teachers. So that was a lifesaver. I don't think I would have graduated without that. So that's one thing to think about now. And then if you ever do, after you graduate, if you're like, I want to go to grad school, but this test entry exam is ridiculous, you know, the general education exams, like for just regular master's or PhD programs, law exams, medical exams, whatever type of school, if you do want to, you know, continue after undergrad, I encourage you to apply for accommodations through that, because I'll say personally, before accommodations, I had the lowest LSAT score, law school entrance score I could possibly have. But then after accommodations, it completely flipped the script, and I went up 30 points because of accommodations. So emphasizing, I think Tulu said this earlier, don't be afraid to ask for accommodations. Reach out to your campuses for help, and after you graduate, if you want to continue to school, you know, reach out to standardized test accommodations. And if you don't do grad school and you just want to do your job, they have to give you accommodations too. So that's what I would say, Julia.
Yeah, and just to add more, just to emphasize what Jill said, schools are required to offer accommodations for people with disabilities. It's a requirement. It's not a privilege for you. They have to do it. But a lot of schools operate differently. Like, using myself as an example, I was initially in a very small town college before I moved to the University of Arizona, which has over 40,000 students where I am now. So when I was in my previous college, we have the Office of Disability Services, but you didn't have to go get registered. I never went there to say, oh, can I get registered as someone with a disability? If I ever needed accommodation for a test or something, I just needed to ask for it by talking to the teacher, or just, you know, just telling them informally, hey, I'm going to need this, I'm going to need this desk or that, and they're going to provide it. But now at the University of Arizona, it's a little different. I have to be registered with the Disability Resource Center, like in the beginning of the semester or at some point. So when I need accommodation later, what they're going to ask is, am I registered with this office? So I can see that difference coming from a very small college where everybody knew me compared with coming to a very large university. So what I think is the central theme for many colleges is that even though they are required to offer accommodations, they expect you to ask. If you don't say you need it, they would not just see you and assume that you need it. So it's very important to actually talk to ask for what you need, and never be afraid to ask for as much accommodation as you need, because everybody is different. The fact that someone else with quote unquote similar disability as yours is requesting for this type of accommodation doesn't mean yours has to be exactly that. You may need more than that, so you can ask for as much as you need. Thank you.
Just really quick, I was gonna say, like, even if you don't think you need to use accommodations, go ahead and sign up so that you will already be signed up and ready to use them if you do need them. Because for me, I thought I was Superwoman, and honey, I had to struggle a lot until my mom was like, well, you're signed up with the Disability Resource Center. Why didn't you go ask for accommodations? And I'm like, oh, so then I went back and I was already signed up. So the accommodations were there. I just needed to have orientation on how to use them. Also, the Disability Resource Center, they're all different, but some of them have resources for scholarships and funding as well. So just go and they're able to help you and guide you and let you know what they offer. And you can still be Superwoman or Superman even with your accommodations.
Yeah, and can I say something really quickly? For folks who are like teachers or TAs or work in different staff offices, like I think especially this year, but just in general, it's really important to kind of unlearn all the like skepticism. Like I know one barrier for folks getting accommodations, specifically for Black folks, is the fear or feeling that they're considered to be taking advantage of the system. And as somebody who like lives in both worlds, as like a student with disabilities and as a TA, like I've heard the wildest conversations. So just to acknowledge that, like, just like we were talking about imposter syndrome, how it's both something we hold and something that's around us. This question around accommodations is also something like we have anxiety around asking for it, and also like there's a perception and energy and an attitude that can come from the people who are supposed to be supporting us. So I just wanted to name that that's real, and then encourage myself and any folks who are in these kind of like staff, faculty, advocate positions to really be critical of conversations that promote a type of skepticism, especially when it comes to Black students. I feel like I've just heard some really uncomfortable comments about like, are they just doing this to get away? And it's like, it really doesn't matter. You know, if somebody's asking for accommodations, they're asking for accommodations. We can't take, like the schoolwork isn't more important than somebody having the time that they need or the things that they need to accomplish it. So I just wanted to.
Absolutely. Y'all, I cannot wait for us to get into this conversation piece. There's been so many great comments, so many great questions rolling in. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna ask one more question of the panel, and then we're gonna open it up for conversation with everyone. So the final question that I have for each of the panelists today is, what does Black disability freedom mean to you? What do you dream of for freedom? Who would like to start?
Mine's really quick. Liberation is big. And then also not being held back by my own disabilities. Being able to just live and feel like the accommodations are going to be there. I know that I won't have an issue with them. That's what freedom will look like. And then also knowing that accessibility isn't an afterthought, it's more so like the foundation. That is freedom, because then that means I don't have to keep asking for these basic things just to get me on the same level as folks without disabilities. Yeah, I'll pass it to the next fellow.
I can jump in. I think so much about, you know, one of the Fannie Lou Hamer quotes that's really like held down our work, right, is nobody's free till everybody's free. And to me, that statement, that quote that Fannie Lou Hamer said in the 60s embodies what we talk about now in disability justice circles as interdependence, right? Like my freedom is deeply connected to your freedom. Freedom isn't like this like Western, like white masculinist idea of like us being like super strong individuals. To me, Black disability freedom, and the only freedom worth fighting for, is like a freedom that is practiced as care, as looking out for each other. And I just dream that folks can rest without feeling guilty. Like that's freedom to me. I dream that folks don't have to worry about being left behind, that our kind of like revolutionary, like, or our radical apocalypse strategies and plans don't leave behind folks who need ventilators or need medicines, that we never forget that hospitals need to be a part of our like communes, you know, that we don't take for granted, that like it's not just a matter of like that the revolutionary subject is no longer like an able-bodied masculine person or person with masculine energy. Like for me, Black disability freedom means like centering a revolutionary subject who is Black, femme, disabled, and making sure that person gets all their needs met, and they don't get left behind. You know, I feel like that's been something I've been learning just this summer when people were talking about the pandemic and like yeah, I feel like I'm just gonna keep talking, but I just really I don't want to have to carry the weight of reminding people that not everybody can just get up and go, or that we can't just say fuck the state. Like, we have to think about, or we can't say fuck the state, but we have to think about, like, what are the state supported things that people actually cannot live without, and how do we create those? Yes, and also I'm sorry for cussing.
Who else?
Okay. Can I just quickly? So, um, Black disability freedom for me. I know the other my two colleagues, they already said it all. So I'm just going to amplify what they say using a little bit of my own experience to talk about what Black disability freedom means. So I came to the United States 3 years ago. I'm an international student. I came for college, and I came as a student in a wheelchair. So when I meet a lot of people and they see me and they ask me, hey, where are you from? You know, these questions. And I tell them I'm from Nigeria. I came to the US at this time for college. They're like, oh, wow, you are so brave. Like, how did, because they ask me, oh, do you know anybody? Do you have family in the US? And I tell them, I don't have any family in the US. I just came by myself for college. And they are always like super shocked when they hear that. Like, wow, how did you do it? You came all by yourself. You know, you must be super brave. You must be this. Now, the thing is, there are thousands and thousands of international students in the United States. So I'm not the only one. And being an international student in the United States is definitely challenging. If you've been in college with international students, especially if you're an international student from a developing country, it can be very challenging to adjust, culture shock, just a bunch of challenges. But if I was with someone who is also an international student, and I meet this friend who is asking us, hey, where are you from, and this and that, and the person says, oh, I came from this country, I don't have any family in the US, I just came to study. They'll be like, wow, that's so cool, you know. When it's me, they're like, you know, super hype, like, wow, how did you do it? Now, the reason behind that is because I have a physical disability. I am in a wheelchair. So that makes it look like I have done something way extra than the average international student. And I do acknowledge there are definitely more challenges being in a wheelchair and moving to a new country to study. But disability freedom would be, I used to tell them that, you see, this is what we are trying to have. This is the type of world that I'm trying to see. A world where someone with a disability will do something that someone without a disability does, and it wouldn't make any difference. People wouldn't see that something special. That is disability freedom. Or you moved from Nigeria to the United States for studies. The reaction of people to that will be the same as what their reaction would be to someone without a disability. Because we live in a world that is accessible, that doesn't have that extra barrier to people with disabilities. Now I live in California and I want to go to maybe Vegas tomorrow. I have to take more time to plan than someone without a disability. I have to think about where I'm going, is it accessible, what is there. Like when I was in college and I was on the speech and debate team, when we were going for a tournament at another college, my coaches would call the hotel to tell them about me, hey, I'm in the wheelchair. Guess what, when we get there, there's still no accommodation. Like the bathroom still doesn't have what, and I'll be like, oh my God, we just called them, we just told them everything, we just told them, hey, I'm in a wheelchair, still this thing is not there. So we have to make extra plans just because of me, because I'm in a wheelchair. If I want to move from here to a different country or to a different state, I have to think twice. That is why when people see me here, they're like, oh, you must be so brave, because even though what I did is the same as what people without disabilities, international students without disabilities would do, the fact that I'm in a wheelchair makes it extra. So disability freedom for me would be having that world where there's no extra barrier. Therefore, if you are in a wheelchair, you can easily go to a different state, a different place, making the same type of plan that someone without a disability would make, knowing that that place is accessible. It has everything that you would need with your disability. That kind of equity in the world is what I would call disability freedom, where I can move to the US as a student without having to face extra challenges just due to disability. I can face just the same challenges as someone without a disability. That for me is Black disability freedom.
I can share some thoughts. I had to take a moment to process what my peers said because, okay, so it's unfortunate I even have to say that this may be an outer space idea and it'll take a long time to do it. But for me, I think disability freedom and dreams comes from literally taking these intersectional and integrated approaches to abolishing carceral systems, you know, to abolish ableism, racist, and other, you know, oppressive systems that impact us. I do live with an invisible disability, but it impacts every aspect of me. It impacts me physically, mentally, emotionally. And if I'm having a mental health episode or a complete body shutdown, I dream of a world where I can tell somebody and the first response isn't to call 911 to literally incarcerate me in a mental health system. I want to live in a world where I can call for help and I can not be displaced somewhere that's even more scary than where I already am. You know, I dream of a place where we don't have carceral systems that feed into a pipeline of, you know, mental health and negatively impacting or injuring people that causes additional disabilities. Fannie Lou Hamer, she got additional disabilities when she was incarcerated. I know a lot of people in my community that were, so that's why in the beginning I said I'm very anti-incarceration. For those two reasons, that's why, you know. And finally, you know, I would say that I dream of a space where our voices can be integrated at every level of voting and civic engagement. I went to a city town hall. I don't like to protest the law enforcement budget, no surprise there. But I went there, you know, I wanted to listen to the city council, and I wanted to tell them instead of investing 74% of their budget in more police after they terrorized many protesters, which also got disabilities because of their tear gas. I went there and I asked them, can you invest more in our education and our health services? And, you know, it didn't affect me at the time, but it affected the person next to me who identified as deaf. They did not have ASL at that meeting, so she was not able to make her voice heard. And, you know, that really upset me. And even though I have a different disability, I want to live in a world where we can fight for each other. So, you know, for me, I guess it's kind of mixed what my freedom and dream is, but that's how I imagine I would keep fighting for it.
What everyone said is so amazing. I feel like it's hard to go last with all the great words that were said between essentially just like abolishing a system, making a better system, to being able to be normal, essentially, amongst other dreams. I mean, I didn't get the freedom to leave my own house until last year independently. I'm 21 and I couldn't leave my own house without help till last year. And so I think, you know, freedom could sometimes be these big things and these little things. I just want to go outside and not worry. Kind of like what Tulu said, especially having a physical disability, everything you do, everywhere you go has to be calculated and planned. Your friend texts you, hey, you want to go to the movies with me? The first thing I can't say is yes. The first thing I have to ask is, what type of car do you have? And it's just being able to go outside and not to worry is my freedom, is to be able to roll with my friends and not have to look at the sidewalk and be scared I'm about to tip over, and plan which are the easy ways around campus, to plan which subway stop is or is not accessible. It's just being able to live. And I feel like for the Black community as well, that's what we needed as well. We need the ability to go outside and just live. I don't like the fact that I have to go to a predominantly white institution and know that I'm different. That consciousness, that double consciousness, that should not be there. I want to be able to just be okay being myself. And I think to kind of summarize it up is one thing that I feel like we need to consider is that anyone at any time can have a disability. Anyone at any time. Sometimes you're born with it, sometimes it's inherited, sometimes it comes later in life. Anyone. It's sometimes just on chance. And I think it's a little bit of that ableism in the mindset where it's like, oh, accessibility is your problem. Accommodations are your problem. No, it's a everyone problem, because you'll never know your family member tomorrow. You could look like me. You can end up like me. Anyone can look like anyone on the panel. We can all have various experiences. Life is crazy, and you never know what you're gonna get. And so once that mindset of, oh, accommodations are you problem, but an everyone problem, they can help everyone. Having this idea that, you know, better mental health practices, easier sidewalks, accessible doors, you know, just like Dreezy said, having better college and being able to be okay to ask for accommodations, to be, you know, normal. I think that's really what freedom is this idea that it's no longer me versus you, but it really helps everyone. And that's really like the biggest freedom that anyone can ask for, besides just not having to worry about everything you do. Thank you.
Wow. What an incredible response to freedom and dreams. Resonates with me on so many different levels. I just appreciate y'all. I really do.
Hello?
Yes, did I hear something?
Yes, I just wanted to say that I agree with all of you, and basically our voices need to be heard. And basically, I used to think that I didn't need accommodations because I was like, I never thought I would be, first of all, I was like a little scared about using accommodations. I didn't want people to think that I am not smart, basically. But now I know that using accommodations helps you to be the best you can be in life. And with accommodations, you'll be able to do anything you can do and put your mind to everything. So now I learned to encourage myself and be there for others.
Absolutely. Welcome to the community.
Thank you.
So good. Do you mind stating your name for us if you're comfortable
My
with that?
name is Adebowale.
Welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think this is a perfect opportunity for us to open it up to a community discussion with everyone that is a part of the group today. So if you have a comment or a question, if you could drop a star or drop it in the chat box, and I'll call on you to basically be able to voice that, or if you want me to read it on your behalf. We have some that have started to trickle in already. So I am going to start with Michael. And Michael asks, will the PowerPoint be sent out separate from the recording? So just a note to everyone, we have been recording the session today. We will follow up soon when we have our instructions on how we will circulate that. I know I'm going to be rewatching this, so that is very helpful. Secondly, I'm going to see if Rebecca, so Rebecca asks, I often have conversations with individuals who are passionate but unsure what to do to make a difference in their community. As an ally, what should I do to be, what should I be doing to encourage inclusivity? Rebecca, did you want to add anything to your question? Just making sure.
Hi, yes. So it's a little bit noisy in the background here. My son is with me. But no, first of all of your voices tonight have been just so empowering. I have come to tears and several times. And I just feel like, especially with the intersectionality of disabilities and wanting to empower the Black voice, I just feel like sometimes those who want to make a difference feel you're exhausted. You're, you know, this double pandemic, you know, COVID has and really unmasked all of the inequities that have been there for a long time. My hope is that there's more awareness because everybody has kind of had to deal with things in a different way. But as an ally, you know, what is it that an individual can do something and be able to take some of the burden off of the Black
Rebecca, you're breaking up just a little bit. Sorry, I think we caught the gist of your question though. I'm going to ask if two of our panelists can respond. We actually have a lot of questions rolling in, so if there are two folks that want to respond to what allyship looks like.
Yeah, I can respond quickly. I think, or the first thing that comes to mind, right, is that it's not just like the burden is not just on Black disabled folks. Like, I feel like there's probably a really good James Baldwin quote around this that's escaping my mind, but like, we're all holding it, right? Like the burden, like the things that impact me. And I think this is also, ooh, okay. When Fannie Lou Hamer first said nobody's free till everybody's free, she was addressing an audience of white feminists or like white women who had gathered at an occasion. They could be named as like a feminist convention or something. I'm sorry, I don't have the exact details, but, and I think that the point of her saying that was to remind folks that like your freedom is only real if it's connected to mine, right? So I think that, I know you're asking for like, well, what are the actual things? And I think like showing up, paying attention, recognizing that it's not like you have to help folks who are carrying something that you're not carrying, but realizing that actually it's hovering over you. You just have to choose to put your hand on it. Like we can all be carrying, like it's all our burden. And I think that's what starts to shift the balance, right? So it's like, just to kind of really challenge, or I guess I'm wanting to kind of challenge this idea that there's like a different burden that we carry. I feel like the weight is different because like we can't ignore what we have to carry. But I think the reality is that like the problems that create conditions of unfreedom for Black and disabled people, for Black and disabled queer people, and so on and so forth, are the same burdens that create the conditions of unfreedom that are behind the big evils of our world. And they are impacting you in this moment. But I think being present for conversations like this, I'm sure there's hella stuff to read, but really just like coming into the challenge to really think about like, what are the ways that your freedom, the things you don't have to worry about and think about are impact, like who's paying for that? Like who is subsidizing your access to freedom? Maybe answering that question is one step. And that could be everything from the sanitation workers to the people who drive for Uber Eats, and just really follow that list. And then think about how you can create better conditions for all those people.
I can also add to what Ross said, and I think it's also just changing your everyday habits can make a big impact as well. Like for instance, although I don't identify with this disability, I do have, you know, brothers and sisters in the community who identify as deaf, blind, or limited vision. And, you know, in some organizations I'm a part of, I'm the leader, and in some of them, you know, I'm a lower staff member. But I make it an adamant point, every single thing that we post or we share, I make sure everything I sent is the font size 14. You know, is there captions to this photo? Is or image descriptions to the photo, or is there captions on this video? You know, just everyday things like that. If someone from the community or a friend, you know, whoever, if you are at an event like this or where, however you get the information, if someone shares it with you, like, just start making it a habit to do it, and you'll start to see, instead of us having to have the burden of asking for the accommodations, it'll actually draw more people to you because they're actually represented and included without having to overcome that burden. And of course, it's nuanced. Everybody needs different things, but at least basic stuff like that is a start, I think.
Very helpful. Thanks, y'all. So I'm gonna go to the next person, and again, we are running out of time, so I'm gonna ask if folks can keep things, speak your point, speak your truth, and briefly if you can. So I'm gonna go to Letitia, if you're still on. Letitia had a comment about workplace and leadership. Are you still on to make your comment?
Okay, here I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have I'm deaf and hard of hearing, and I've been working at Seton Hall Law School for 30 years. And the first 15 years were really trying because the workplace didn't understand what hearing loss really was and how it impacted a person. So I had a long struggle, and now I'm finishing my PhD. I have my master's in communication, strategic communication, a BA in business administration. But what I want to get to is that for the first time, Seton Hall just last year got an inclusive and diversity department. And they create a community conversation where they talk about any kind of disability or differences that people have and they struggle with, whether it be culture, where you're from, your disability. And they just try to include everybody. But the point I'm getting to is that while they have this platform there, you still don't have many people that participate. You have the students, but faculty and leadership, they don't come. Only a few people. The majority of them don't participate. So that gets to, if the behavior of leadership really takes on making students, faculty, whoever has a disability or someone that has differences feel included, the behavior can trickle down into everybody else because they see you embracing the differences. And that's, you know, that's just, I don't understand how that's just so hard to take yourself and put yourself in somebody else's shoes, because the pandemic finally helped me feel included in the environment because we do everything, teams, you gotta have captions, you know, so those are the things I needed years ago, but it wasn't a big deal because it didn't impact everybody. So now that it's impacting everybody, it's included. And you know, it's sad to say, but we can't stop fighting for what we want, we have, and what we need and deserve in order to feel included in the environment. We have to keep speaking up. You have to be your best self-advocate. So when you need something, you have to ask for it. And you, especially if the law is protecting you to get it, speak up and ask for it. For example, you also have to keep yourself involved, join social groups. I'm the vice president of the Hearing Loss Association in the state of New Jersey, but it's not. You have some Black people involved, but you don't have a lot of Black people involved. And we have a local chapter where I'm the founder of that. But there are over 200-something thousand people in the state of, in Essex County with hearing loss, and we can't reach them. We go to the schools and we ask the schools and local neighborhoods for the deaf, hard of hearing to participate And they say, oh, we do that already, we do it. So how do we change the mindset to get more people involved so that we can build a big community base so we can help each other? Because it's hard, you know, it's so hard. And I just don't understand why, you know, I'm listening to the students, and I'm still a student myself. I'm almost done with my PhD, but I'm 54 years old. But I don't let anything stop me from going after what my dreams are and feeling included to get the things I want out of life. But how do we create a community where we can get more people involved? And for somebody like me that's on hard of hearing, how do I get people involved so that they can realize how we grow when we support each other and we're open to learn about the differences? How do we do that? And I'll keep doing what I'm doing, but I can't get the masses in. You know, we get a small amount of people, but locally, and I know there's plenty of people in the community that's dealing with being hard of hearing or deaf. Now, deaf, that culture, because deaf and hard of hearing is kind of like a separate, they can bring in more support than people that's hard of hearing. Because people that's hard of hearing, you're like, because you can communicate and you can hear, your disability is not as impactful as a deaf person and can't do those things.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your comment. Is there one panelist who has any reactions to Letitia's remarks?
Hello again. So,
Hold on, Ade. Hold on, buddy. They're speaking to the panelists, okay?
oh, okay.
Thank you.
Is there any one panelist who might have any thoughts or reactions to that? If not, I'm gonna pass it back to. I'm sorry. I don't want to say your name.
Ade.
Yes. Go ahead, please.
I just want to say that leadership is the one that chooses you. You don't choose leadership. And when leadership chooses you, you either have what you call it? You need to be passionate about leadership. You can't just like give up. So basically what I'm saying is to the teachers that we need a bigger what you call it? A bigger environment, a bigger team to expand and get our voices heard. Basically, we need a bigger environment and bigger team. And to get our message, when we get a message across is when everyone is going to be counted as people who are normal and who could fight for our rights, basically. We just need to be heard. And since we are fighting for our rights, we need to trudge on and not give up, basically.
Absolutely.
Here, I don't know if there's time. I did want to say something quickly. Okay. I understand. I think Natasha, I believe that's your name. I understand what you're saying. On school and campus, I'm trying to help the Black community. It is just so hard. There's events, nobody comes, or there's things we're trying to do, and we don't reach the masses. So I definitely understand that frustration. Something that I've been told recently is get connected with groups on Facebook or other social media platforms. Even though there is that separation between hard of hearing and the deaf community, there's always someone that's willing to join them together. There's always somebody that has that shared passion that you do. And I would just say keep looking for groups on Facebook or in other ERG groups, like Jalen said, that can help fuse those communities together. to reach the masses and just spread the word through social media, through emails, through text, to all of your connections. I think is the best way to reach those masses.
Yes. Oh my goodness. So I just want to hope that, and everyone can help me thank our panelists, the Fannie Lou Hamer organizers, for being a part of this event, for sharing such thought-provoking topics, for sharing such personal things about their life. Like, I've learned so much from being a part of this event today. So I just want to say thank you so much for doing this. I want to thank everyone for participating in today's event. Clearly, we have ran out of time. We are already a little over the top of the hour, and there's so many other thoughts and questions that unfortunately we didn't get to. But at the same time, I think that is an extreme indicator that we need more spaces like this. We need more spaces where we can conversate about intersectionality, about Blackness and disability, about race and disability. So I think that's a call for all of us, AAPD, the Fannie Lou Hamer program, and the organizations that you're a part of, to say, how can we create this space? To bring it back full circle, we talked about a variety of different issues today, things that are important to us across campus and the workplace and our personal lives. And one of the ways in which we create change is by making sure we are building a system that genuinely works for us. And that means we need people who are speaking and advocating about the issues that are important to us. So make no mistake that everything that we talked about today is connected to civil rights, is connected to civic engagement, and is connected to what's happening in the 2020 general elections right here and today. If you have not voted already, we need you to vote. We need every single vote, and we need you calling mama, we need you calling daddy, we need you calling grandma, auntie, cousin, everybody, and saying, have you voted, right? So early voting is still underway for some states, and if that's not the case, then we need to make sure that you're dropping your ballots off at the ballot box. We need to make sure that you are voting on election day. Whatever your methodology is, make sure that you participate. You can go to AAPD's website to find a list of resources so that you are prepared for your election. So if you go to www.aapd.com, the top of the page says voting in 2020. And you will find a myriad of things to make sure that you are prepared for this election cycle. Again, we cannot thank you enough for being a part of the discussion. We will be following up. You will be hearing more from us. And then just one final announcement that I want to make is another program related to AAPD. Currently, we have a program for college students and recent graduates with disabilities all across the country. We are committed to economic empowerment. So we host a summer internship program where we fly folks from all across the country to Washington, D.C. to work on Capitol Hill, to work in departments, to work in corporate America, to work with a variety of agencies. It's a paid internship where you are grounded in community, where you are grounded in accessibility, and we are working to make sure you're successful. That application is currently open through November 12th, if I'm not mistaken. So again, if you go to the AAPD website, we want to encourage you to apply, or we want to encourage you to spread the word about this internship and make sure that people are getting access to economic opportunities. So again, I want to say thank you for joining today's event. I'm going to ask for the organizers to stay on for a minute, and Bereatown, if you have a minute, if you can stay on for a minute, but everyone else, please, if you could hop off. We want to thank you for joining the event, and until next time, I hope y'all have a great weekend.